Okay, everyone. Good morning. It's Friday morning. Big day, John. It's a huge day. We're back with a huge match tonight. Can't wait to see Celtic back. How you feeling about it all?
Is it a huge day
Right.
because you're on the Celtic way, or is it a huge day because Celtic are back for pre-season? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, a bit of everything. It's
Bit of
a
everything.
huge day. Everyone's returning today. Yeah, 41 days since the Scottish Cup final.
Yeah.
John, is it flown in? Has it dragged?
No, it's dragged a bit for me. I even had a holiday in the middle, and it still feel like it's dragged a wee bit. I'm glad to get back into matches. It gives everyone something to focus on. I will start to see the formation of Brendan Rodgers' squad as he goes on. I think there's a lot of work to do. I think everyone realises that. But I will be really glad to see Celtic back on the pitch in some form tonight, even though it's not going to be a full strength team or anything, but it'll still be good to see a Celtic team put on a performance.
I've noticed a few folk getting a little bit worried about the transfer stuff, just with the
Mm-hmm.
news that Nicolas Kuhn's leaving us, and we've maybe not signed a whole load of first team game changers. But I think two, even if you say Nigrin and Tierney, I think it's pretty good by the start of their first pre-season match. But I've just noticed a few people getting a little bit worried, so we'll keep an eye on that as we go through the
Mm.
summer.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, people get twitchy at the best of times. I think the Nicholas Kuhn news just adds an extra layer of twitchiness onto the people who are already feeling a bit weird about everything. I'm kind of in your camp though. I mean, I was speaking to Kevin. Kevin was on the show yesterday, and I think Kevin was quite cynical about everything happening at Celtic just now. And I think, and that's a fair enough viewpoint. And there's lots of people who do think like that. I think for me, I'm quite happy to have two first teamers in for the first match of pre-season. They're not even back from their holidays yet, so it's not as if they're needed for tonight or the next game or anything. Like Tierney won't be in tonight's squad, Negrin won't be in tonight's squad either.
Yeah.
So there's I'm pretty happy with the direction, and I think Nicholas Kuhn. I think the feeling was going into the summer that Nicholas Kuhn was going to be leaving Celtic. I'd rather he leave Celtic in the first week of pre-season than in the last week of August. So everyone knows where they stand. Everyone knows what Celtic need. It's not, you don't look at the squad and think, "Oh God, what does Celtic need this summer? What's the puzzling elements here?" I think everyone's very clear on where Celtic's position is and where they stand and the players that need to come in, and it's just about delivering now, which obviously is the hardest part. But I think there's a fair bit of clarity around Celtic this summer for me. There's a lot of people talking about how there's kind of worries or concerns or underlying stuff. For me, it looks the situation at Celtic looks clear this summer.
I mean, I agree. I feel kind of all right about things. I think the fact we've got some business done, and I know not every player, the five players, if you include Inamura, I know not all of them are probably going to go straight in. Probably, Inamura, clearly Doohan's in as a squad player who we might need at some stage. And Callum Osmond is not going to go straight in. But I still think those are kind of necessary or good signings. Like I don't think there's an issue there. I don't feel like it's an issue like Celtic are signing these players instead of first team game changers. And I think Nigrin and Tierney's really good business. So no, I feel good. Let's just tackle the Nicholas Kuhn
Yeah.
stuff for a little bit then. Morning, everyone. By the way, good to have you with us. Really appreciate it, even if you're on your holiday, like my ball is. Yeah, so Nicholas Kuhn, where we're at with this is that Celtic have accepted a bid, not from, well, possibly from Leipzig, I'm not sure, but certainly the most important one is from Como, the Serie A side, 10th in Serie A last season, managed by Cesc Fabregas. We've accepted a bid of a reported €19 million. That equates to £16.5 million. The reports, this is coming from Fabrizio Romano, also German journalist Florian Plettenberg, saying that Kuhn will have a medical, I think, early next week, or he'll sign early next week. Personal terms have been agreed. Formal details being clarified, then everything will be signed. So Nicholas Kuhn's going to be leaving us, John. We're getting, I was looking, and people may think the fee's a little bit lower than they may have thought for Kuhn, but it's still going to be the fifth highest sale in Celtic history after O'Reilly, Tierney, Jota and Dembele. So we're talking about a major departure here in terms of money.
Yeah, a major departure. I think there's a lot of chat about the fee and whether it's enough or whatever. For me, it's in the right ballpark. I think.
Yeah, yeah.
I think when you look at the players who have left Celtic before, they've either been younger or they've had higher potential, and that's really what clubs play for now across Europe is potential. Nicolas Kuhn is a mid-career player. He turns 26 this season, and in January, I think. Now that's not old by footballing terms at all, but when you look at the trajectory of fees after this point, when players start to get to 27, 28, 29, it goes down drastically. And I actually think this is the perfect time to be selling Nicolas Kuhn. Now, the caveat with that is that you need to replace his contribution to the team. 21 goals, 15 or 16 assists last season. That's a healthy contribution to Celtic's season. And it will be difficult to replace that both from within the squad and in the market. I don't think that's easy at all. I don't think it's a given that we find a player who can score 20 goals for us and provide 15 or 16 assists for us across the season. That is difficult. But from start to finish, I look at the Nicolas Kuhn thing. Celtic have bought a player mid-career for £3 million. He's come in and done really well for Celtic, been a large contributor to domestic success, hit fire for 4 or 5 months and was electric and helped us progress in Europe and all sorts of things. And now we're selling him at what we would consider as a peak value. I don't think we would get more for Nicolas Kuhn in a year than we would now. And I think just all in, this is a pretty good advert for what Celtic want their transfer model to be. A kind of aggressive, flexible transfer model that sees a player come in for £3 to £8 million and then get sold for a pretty healthy profit. Along the way, the player has contributed very well to Celtic. And I think if we're honest about it, I don't think we ever thought Nicolas Kuhn was going to be a lifer at Celtic. As soon as he hit form for Celtic, it seemed like his camp were selling him, or there were stories of transfers selling him, and that feels to me like he's a bit of a Josip Juranovic character, where he saw Celtic as a stepping stone, which is fine, and we're going to have players like that come through the door. So again, from start to finish, I think Celtic have done the Kuhn thing pretty well here, and I think it'll work out well for all parties in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I made that exact point earlier. Josip Juranovic, possibly Georgios Yakimakis as well. His situation was slightly different, but not every signing we make with this transfer model either has to be a complete flop who doesn't make it, or someone who absolutely stars for us and we fall in love with, and they're posting emotional messages when they leave the club, a la O'Reilly, Dembele, Jota when he left. You can have players in this model that come in, do really well for us, but maybe leave a bit sooner than we would expect, and probably don't ever really fall in love with the club. Like, obviously, I think guys like Jota and O'Reilly and Dembele fell in love with Celtic, and the support fell in love with them. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm not sure Nicolas Kuhn ever properly got to that point. I think he possibly always, just viewed Celtic as a club that he could play really well for and earn his move, and that's fine. Like, that, it's his career. He's been great for us. He's been a good player. Frustrating at times. I don't think we should overlook that. I thought, last number of months of the season he was really poor, and I think, to be fair, I think that is factoring into everyone's minds. But just generally looking at comments, I sense that people are okay with that. But it does come down to the replacement for me, and what Celtic need to do here. For me, like, we're at a point now where, that way when Kuhn arrived at the club, he was able to. He had time to get up to speed, and he needed time. He needed a number of months. We need a right winger to come in and to start for us, because we have a Champions League qualifier in 6.5 weeks. Regardless of what happens in that qualifier, we've got 8 European matches of a high level. We've got, a new challenge from Rangers. We need someone to come in who can hit the ground running here, and that's my big thing here. And I know Kuhn turned out to be great for us, but we need someone who can come in right away. They're not going to take lots of time to get up to speed.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think selling Kuhn and the kind of trajectory of Kuhn from arrival to exit is fine in isolation, but again, Celtic need to be thinking a bigger picture beyond that. And if no one comes in that can replace the contribution that Kuhn made, then questions will be asked and it will be a problem. And we need a quality player coming in the next 4 weeks. I would say, like that's the deadline for me. But arguably before that, you need someone in before the end of July, really, if you want them to be taking part in a meaningful part in those qualifying games in mid-August. You want them to have at least a couple of weeks training with the team. So there is a little bit of a deadline, a self-imposed deadline on transfers coming in, away from what the window deadline is, and hopefully that urgency exists within the club. Kuhn's sale only becomes a problem if Celtic don't follow up, and that's what we need to see, and that's what fans have been crying out for already throughout June, never mind into July. So it's really on the club to deliver here. But we've got Nygren in the door. I know he's not an out-and-out winger. He plays a different role than Kuhn. We do have him in the door. We need another outright winger, and arguably two. We need probably a star winger, and probably a winger on loan to cover for the Jota situation. So we arguably need two in that position, plus another centre forward of sorts. So there's a lot of business to be done. I think there's a lot of money to be spent. Celtic have the money, both in terms of the money that they retained from last season and this sale of Nicolas Kuhn, this impending Nicolas Kuhn sale. So the resources are there to do it. There's no real excuses, Hamish. That's what I'm trying to set out here. There's no excuses for Celtic not to deliver here. They have to deliver over the next 4 weeks and give Brendan Rodgers the players he needs for this two-legged tie in August.
And you would hope that Kuhn leaving isn't a huge surprise to them, and you would hope that they'd have players lined up. But we said that with Kyogo, and obviously we didn't sign a replacement. I've seen a bit of stuff online about Celtic, they won't spend money to replace him. We did spend £40 million last season.
Celtic are spending money. Yeah, I
think it's a bit of a myth that we're not spending money, and I think you're going. I know that the fee isn't the most important thing, really, but you are looking for a bit of a statement to be made there. You're wanting a player who really gets you, excited. Most importantly, a player who comes in and does well for us, obviously. But you know what I mean? You want like a player who can just, you kind of get a feeling, right, he's going to come in and hit the ground running right away. You don't want, a really young guy who's maybe there's a bit of doubt about. And I think the club, we're hopefully going to be a Champions League club. We've got a lot of money there. There's a position there for someone. It's not like someone's coming in and they're playing under Kuhn for a year before he leaves. There's a position right there. I know James Forrest is there, Yang's there, but I think we're looking for a first choice. Go and make it happen.
Yeah, I don't think I've really got a problem. I've said this before. I don't think I've really got a problem with Celtic's intent to spend money. It's can they spend money on the right sort of player to, in the time frame that we need. I've had an issue with is the expertise within the club to, navigate the market as effectively as Celtic need to in this kind of modern age, and I think there are question marks around that. I think we saw in January that was far from ideal. What happened in January in terms of selling Kyogo and then not having a replacement there. That's not about intent. I don't think the Celtic board looked at that and thought we don't want to spend any money to replace Kyogo. I just think Celtic couldn't get a deal done, and that's a bigger issue actually than the intent, because intent can be changed, but expertise is hard to change if you're not making personnel changes or you're not recruiting someone in a specialist role to help you. So I think the money is there. I think the intent is there, and really it's about Celtic just following through on it all now. And I guess we'll see, Hamish. We could be sitting here in a month slating the board for not preparing Brendan Rodgers' squad enough, but we've got to feel at least that Celtic can do the business required here, because again, I don't think there's any excuses.
Just before I go into a few comments, how will you remember Nicolas Kuhn as a Celtic player?
I'll remember that game against Leipzig. I think that's probably the game I'll remember most. I thought he was thrilling. I think that burst in the first half of the season was thrilling. He was a thrilling player. He was exciting. I'll even remember, and we talked about this, but the games in America where he just kind of burst into this team in pre-season after a fairly underwhelming 4 or 5 month spell up to that point. I know he had injury and fitness issues, but from pre-season onwards until really Celtic went out of Europe, I thought Nicolas Kuhn was our best player, Celtic's best player. And I thought he was electric in the way he played, fast, quick, really good finishing ability, just looked on it on all fronts. So I remember him as a fine Celtic player. Not one of Celtic's greats by any means, but for a season, for half a season, he was excellent, and I'll fondly remember what he contributed, especially that game against Leipzig, which I think was a peak for Nicolas Kuhn, but also for Celtic in Europe in the last few years.
Yeah, I mean, well, I was going to say that goal in Munich for me. I mean, that for me, that's one of the kind of, I know it was disappointing in the end, but
Yeah,
one of the most amazing kind of Celtic moments I've ever had following the club, and I think a lot of people will be the same. You know, a knockout tie away to Bayern Munich. When I remember going into that game, and all the chat before it was, you never know, but I think we all felt deep down a 3 or 4 nil defeat was coming, and it'd be over, after 20 minutes. And God, the team were brilliant that night, and we played and we played, and then Kuhn going in and scoring that goal. I mean, that for me was to be honest, about as good as it gets following Celtics. I think I'll remember him for that. I'll remember lots of really good moments. I think I'll remember the end of, to be honest, the start and end of his time at Celtic as well, where I thought at times he was, a bit disappointing. So I'll remember everything. Just going to go through a few comments.
yeah.
So Natalie asking, think we'll get a replacement. We've kind of covered that. Henrik McClarson, it's odds on that Kuhn will score against us against Como. Will he crack a smile if he does? Do just want to say, everyone, because I've seen a bit of this, we're not actually guaranteed to play Como. We're guaranteed to play Ajax, and we could play Como in the other game, either Como or Al Ahly. So there's no guarantees that we'll face Kuhn and Alex Vai as well, who's at Como. Ian, hopefully this means Rayo and Maida won't be moving this summer. And also Kenny Boy saying the question now is, can we let any more first team players go?
I think I don't want to be a herald of bad news, but just from the way Brendan Rodgers is speaking midweek in terms of like some of these players have been here for a long time, you need freshness in the squad. I think that's him paving the way, not because Kuhn's not been here for a long time, so I've got a feeling one or two might leave more, but that's not based on.
You can't lose two more first team players after Kuhn, surely. I mean, one we can maybe just about deal with, Hatate, but if you're to lose,
I'll say at least. I'll say one then. I'll say one. Okay. And again, this is not based on any knowledge. It's just a gut feeling. Yeah. I just feel like it's maybe that summer of a little bit of change at Celtic, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Rio Hatate leave. I wouldn't be surprised to see someone else leave. Okay. Again, a lot of this comes down to a player's intent as well. I think we've seen the peril of keeping a player longer than they want to be at Celtic. Now, we can do that because they're all on long-term contracts. It is something we can do. But what is the benefit? What's the upside of that? At some points, it becomes diminishing returns. The player might not, be playing as well. His value might drop a little bit. So there's an element of timing to all this as well. But I think your point is accurate. When we're thinking about the timing of selling a player, you have to think about the overall picture, and can Celtic afford to lose this many players at this particular time? I think with Kuhn leaving, I think it does. You can't let too many players leave at one time, is what I'm saying. But I could see another big player leaving this summer, yeah, undoubtedly.
It's tended to be two in recent years, hasn't it? Because it was like, was it Hart and O'Reilly last year, and then there was one year I think we lost Starfelt and Jota. So it tends to be two important players. So yeah, the club will have to deal with that. And listen, we've been fine the last few years. I mean, we made real improvements in Europe last year after losing Joe Hart and Matt O'Reilly. So that was impressive. Right, MJ, I think this is a perfect time to sell. It's early in the window. He had a great 6 months, and we've made 13 million, which needs to be reinvested. Sean, happy with the fee for Kuhn. If he started the season the way he finished, last his value would have plummeted. I think we break our transfer record this summer against Says.
Yeah, I think there's a decent chance of that. Yeah, decent chance of that. Totally.
Okay, Gordon's asking about who plays left back tonight. Probably Adam Montgomery, but we can come on and chat a little bit about the game. Is there anything else? I saw Cameron Carter-Vickers has had surgery over the course of the summer. Did you see that?
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I think Cameron Carter-Vickers seems to have issues quite consistently. I always think they're nothing that Celtic worry too much about. I think his hamstring the other year was obviously a big blow, but I think other than that, it's hopefully just a kind of preparation type minor surgery that he needs for the season, rather than like a long-term issue, and that he'll be okay. Again, his situation this summer I think is very interesting, just considering he's been at Celtic for quite a long time now, and Brendan Rodgers has been saying the kind of things that he's been saying. So we'll wait and see how Cameron Carter-Vickers pans out. I don't think Celtic should be selling Cameron Carter-Vickers, but again, it's just one of those things that's in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Okay. Another thing I just want to mention, you're probably aware of this, everyone, but John Clarke's funeral mass is today. So the service will take place at St Mary's Church in the Carlton. Really good news that the club are broadcasting this live on the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch around the world. I don't know if I said there, but I think it starts at noon. And the funeral cortege will travel down the actual Celtic Way at approximately 1:15, and there'll be big crowds there, I'm sure, as well. So people can get involved. I'll certainly be watching. I'm assuming the first team players and the women's team and all that will probably be involved there as well.
Yeah, I think there'll be full attendance for that. We had a special John Clarke show last week. Myself and Kevin McKenna just talking for about 45 minutes about John Clarke and kind of his legacy at the club. So you can check that out if you want to go back and look at that. As I said on that show, it's just like a living link between generations, and that's how I remember all these guys when I was growing up, learning about Celtic. The Lisbon Lions were still totemic, and that was in the early 90s, and there was all sorts of footage and all sorts of VHSs and all sorts of nonsense, that I really tuned into at that time, and it was formative for me as part of my Celtic supporting journey. It wasn't just about the current team, it was always this look back into these glory years of the past, and John Clarke was a true icon of that, given that he had so many years of service in the backroom staff and had knowledge and relationships with current managers and players, etc., and supporters on a day-to-day basis. So it's so sad that John Clarke is passed now as well, and I'll be watching the funeral mass today and the scenes at Celtic Way as well.
Yeah, so that's later today, everyone. This evening, Celtic are back. We're playing our first pre-season match, and it's Queen's Park. We're playing at Lesser Hampden, or whatever they call it now. What are they calling it now?
The City Stadium, is it not called? I think.
Why would you get rid of Lesser Hampden? Lesser Hampden's such an iconic name. Does what it says in the tin. But I guess these things have changed. What are we expecting tonight? A mainly fringe team with a few notable faces: McGregor, Engels, Trusty, maybe.
I think we'll see Callum McGregor. I think we'll probably see Luke McCowan at some stage. I think we'll see Austin Trusty, as you've said. I think in terms of new faces, I think we'll see Ross Doohan in goal, just because Sinisalo and Schmeichel are on international duty. I don't think they were quite back yet this week. And I think we might see Callum Osmond for a decent spell in the match too. Now, he's obviously been training with the team all week, but I think he was at Lennox Town prior to that too, preparing with some of the youth players as well. So I think Callum Osmond will be ready for minutes this evening. And I think that's probably a player that most people are looking forward to seeing a glimpse of. We don't know much about this guy. He's not played a senior game in his career before. And Brendan Rodgers has been clear with the fact that he's going to be given kind of like... They're going to test out to see where he's at in his development before making a decision on whether he's part of the first team squad going into the season or whether he needs a development loan or something like that. So this is the start of that for Callum Osmond tonight. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he offers. And looking forward to seeing some of the other fringe and youth players, Jude Bonner perhaps, Ben Summers coming back from loan at Admirav Vakar. A few little players I'd quite like to see some of tonight. But yeah, it's going to be mostly youth and fringe players with a smattering of first team stars. Yeah, that's what I'm expecting.
Simon wants to see McArdle playing tonight. I think we might see a bit of McArdle over pre-season actually. It's going to be good to see him. I hope we do as well. So these games are all about like kind of finding your wee bits of joy and excitement, and Callum Osmond's a bit of that, McArdle's a bit of that, some of the younger players. I think just having the team back, it's just nice, isn't it? It's going to be nice to watch Celtic playing again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. And I'll be tuned in. Some people just avoid pre-season altogether, and I respect that, but I tune into every single minute of pre-season, partly because it's what I do for the job, but also I would be anyway. That's what I did before I did it for the job. I just like seeing Celtic play, and I like finding the little talking points. In fact, you don't learn huge amounts about the team or the progress of the team, but I think you do learn about individuals, or you learn about a sense of where an individual is within the makeup of the team. And we know that these games do form impressions on the manager too. It's not like they're totally meaningless and Brendan Rodgers isn't formulating any conclusions about any of these players. He will be, especially the young players. if a young player comes in and shows a bit about himself and shows a confidence, then I think it will go a long way to Brendan Rodgers thinking about what he does with that player over the course of the season. So some of these players, it's a bigger deal than others, but I think from a Celtic fan perspective, I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, we were talking about Nicolas Kuhn earlier, but he's a perfect example of pre-season.
Exactly.
And because I remember, so the equivalent game to tonight's last year, I was actually at it. It was at Ayr United. We started that, and Kuhn played that game. To be fair, I didn't think he was amazing that day. But Nicolas Kuhn over the course of pre-season, it's crazy when you look back over it. People talk about the start of the season, but it was over the course of pre-season he went from being a guy we were not sure about to being a guy we were really excited about. And I mean, do you think is there anyone in the squad that could happen to? I mean, I'm thinking Arnie Engels is a possible obvious one, because he's similar story to Kuhn, because you're hoping he makes a fast start to pre-season.
Well, I think Arnie Engels is probably the player I want to see the biggest jump from this year. I would say Paulo Bernardo's in that camp as well, to be quite frank with you. I know he won't be featured tonight because he was on international duty with the under-21s, but he's approaching the stage where he needs to make a jump up as well and show more consistency in a Celtic shirt. I'm expecting quite a lot from Engels and Bernardo this season in terms of where they are at in their Celtic career. So they would be too. But I think if you look back to last pre-season, I think those games in America, I remember Kuhn played really well in them and Celtic played really well in them. And everyone was saying, oh, well, it doesn't matter much. It's just pre-season. It matters nothing. But ultimately, the way that Celtic played in those matches became like a blueprint for what we did eventually see in Europe and did see from Nicolas Kuhn in terms of those breakaway runs and those incisive runs in behind defences. So you do get some learnings from pre-season if you're looking close enough. I always feel like that. I think just writing off pre-season as a totally meaningless exercise is quite redundant as well at times. So there's a bit of both.
We better chat about Marco Tilio. I've not seen him at all. He was away in international duty with the Socceroos, so I'm assuming he's not, joined up yet, or if he even will join up for pre-season. I'm not sure. Yang won't be involved tonight. Carter Vickers won't be involved, as you say. Sinizalo, Schmeichel, Alistair Johnson. So yeah, it's going to be a mainly kind of Scottish youth team. There might be a bit of juggling about. As I say, Adam Montgomery's kind of our only left back, so we might end up with Stephen Welsh at right back or something like that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's going to be an odd one. I was thinking, like, is it viable to do some sort of predicted 11 either on the channel or on the site? And I'm just like, there's no point. That's a pointless exercise because it could just be potluck. It could just be a mishmash tonight of different players. And that's fair enough. That is the stage of pre-season we're at. It is about fitness. It is about, just getting through the minutes and getting through the muscle memory of matches again. But again, as Brendan Rodgers pointed out the other day, when you're at a club like Celtic, maybe pre-season means little if you're at a smaller club, but at Celtic there's so much scrutiny in every game that the conclusions are going to be reached regardless of if the match means anything or not. That is just the reality of playing for Celtic. So, yeah.
Is this the stage where you all just start shouting out names and we tell you if they're playing or not? Ian, will KT play? No. Next. Wazerboy, will Ralston play? No. Next. Ralston's not with them, is he? No,
I don't think so. No. And
Welsh and Trusty centre back, possibly.
Maeda and Hatate also not there, just so you know. So.
Kwon. I've not seen Kwon actually.
Yeah, that's an interesting. I've heard rumblings that Kwon will be moving on this summer, but we'll need to see how that pans out as well.
Is there any other transfer stuff? I mean, Inamura, kind of feel like the club probably won't announce that today, just with John Clark's funeral taking place. I could be wrong there, but they may hold that off till next week. But that's that's done.
Yeah, Inamura's pretty much done. He came to the UK. I think he went through his medical in London, and I think it's just waiting for it all to be signed off and unveiled, etc., etc. I do agree. I think Celtic will prioritise John Clark's funeral today, rightly so. By the way, I'm not criticising there, rightly so. And that will be the focus of the day moving into tonight. And then after tonight, I think signings could start to get announced anytime, really, even over a weekend. I wouldn't be surprised at this point. But apart from that, nothing really major going on. I think we're kind of waiting for the next wave of kind of Celtic transfer activity. I think we've come through this first wave, and now we're kind of we're going into this next little barrage of signings, and hopefully the reports and the movements actually happen quickly, because as we said at the top of the show, there is an urgency this summer, and I don't think we should shy away from that. There is an urgency that Celtic need to deliver on.
God, is there some laugh? Oh, I've got Sadie Ankle play, will Beaton play, Hoopy the Huddle Hound. Oh, honestly, watch out, Kevin Bridges. He's have got his job. Coverage on the Celtic way, John. Is there anything?
Yeah, we'll have coverage in the Celtic way tonight, and in the Herald tomorrow on tonight's Queen's Park game. Tony's on his way to Ireland. Tony's doing some special reporting in Ireland for us. On Irish Celtic Supporters Clubs, on John Keane, who was the man who transferred the money that saved Celtic in 1984, on various other bits and pieces. So Tony's going to be in Ireland chasing all that up for us. He's going to be at the Cork game somehow as well to cover that for us as well. So we do have coverage on the Celtic way. Ryan will be back from holiday at some point next week as well, so we're getting up to full speed. And yeah, we've got lots coming in. We've got a special profile on Inamura coming on the weekend as well. After he's announced, so we've got all sorts. I know you had an Inamura video on your channel as well, Hamish, that people might want to check out.
Oh yeah, appreciate you giving that a shout out. Yeah, that was good. I'm not sure it was totally positive, but it'll be interesting to see your guys' one as well and see what's being said. I'm not sure. I think he might be one for the future, but he'll hopefully come in soon and get some pre-season matches under his belt as well. Okay, I'll head off and yeah, just a final reminder. John Clark's funeral mass is today, 12 o'clock, St Mary's Church, and it'll be broadcast live on Celtic's YouTube channel. So, we'll head off for now. We'll all catch up with you very soon. Cheers.